Hello and welcome to my presentation on antique dollhouses, accessories, and dolls. Thank you so much for viewing this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did putting it on. First of all, before we talk about this wonderful house that I'm standing next to, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Sharon Barton-Maggio. I'm married to John Maggio. Between our two families, we have 5 children, 4 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. I own a very large business that is my passion and my joy, but it's very difficult. And so my houses have given me an opportunity, whether I'm restoring them, whether I'm decorating them. They give me so much pleasure, and it really helps with a very difficult business. I just want to tell you a little bit about how I came, because that's the first question people always ask. How did you come to this hobby? How did you get addicted to this hobby? And so I'll take you on a quick journey that will explain how that happened. My sister and I were talking after my mother had passed away, and she was having a very difficult time, as well as myself. We started talking about our parents, then we talked about our childhood, and then, as you would think, it went to childhood toys. And my sister said, "Sharon, what happened to our dollhouses?" Well, we live in Southern California and you don't have basements here, so I'm sure that they were probably donated or given away. And she started talking about it and saying, remember how much fun we had and how much she really enjoyed it. And you could just tell that she was just getting excited about it. She told me that she didn't like hers. Hers was a cardboard one. Mine was a Marx dollhouse and easier to play with, but she never liked hers. And then in a moment of remorse, she turned to me and said, "Sharon, I have to tell you something." She said, "When you would go to school, I hated my dollhouse so much I would go in and play with yours." And I thought, oh, duh. Does she think I didn't notice it? Did she think I didn't realize when the furniture was all moved around? And one particular day I found 4 of those little pink babies that came in all the Marx dollhouses. They were all lined up on a couch. Now, we know that no good dollhouse mother is going to leave babies on the couch. And we laughed when I told her that, and she just seemed to just talk about the houses, and I thought, I have an idea. I said, what if I could find our houses again? And she said, oh, that'd be wonderful just to see them. So I have to tell you that is what started me on a wonderful journey. I knew I had to make a plan if I was going to find those houses. So my first plan was to go to as many antique stores as I could. And if that didn't work, then I would then try talking to people or asking questions of the staff that worked in those antique stores. And then if that didn't work, I would start researching. So the first one, going to all the antique stores, that didn't work because you can't possibly go to enough on one weekend. So I went back to one of the antique stores where I had, one of the sales ladies was really very nice and very informative. And I told her, I said, I've been to several of your stores, I can't find what I'm looking for. And she said, well, you should go find a copy of Toy Chest. And I said, what is Toy Chest? She said, well, it's a wonderful newspaper that has so many articles in it, and there's sellers that are letting you know what type of merchandise, and it's all dedicated to toys from the very early to the very current times. And I knew I had there was a newsstand very close to me. I went to it, I saw it on the stand, I grabbed it. I think the poor clerk thought I was going to steal it because I was so happy to see it. And I looked, I went home, looked through it, went page by page, circled articles, and until I found an article by Judy Mossholder. And in her ad, she talked about that she had Renoir dollhouse furniture for sale. Well, I knew that's not what I wanted, but I thought, well, at least it's a lead. So I did call her, and told her what I was looking for, and she said, well, she couldn't help me with that if I ever found the house, and she could help me with the furniture, and well, that's wonderful. And then she said, Sharon, don't you realize that you have a very large dollhouse club in Northern California? And I said, no, I just started looking for these houses. I don't have any resources. And she said, well, you need to call a number that she gave me. She said, Royce Beck is a famous collector. He has a huge collection. He attends these meetings 4 times a year. She said, call him. So a couple days later, I did just that. I wasn't sure because he was this very famous man, and I didn't know if he would even talk to me, and I apologized for calling him and told him what I was looking for, and instantly he just started talking, and we were reminiscing, and he was so kind and so informative. And then he said the magic word, Sharon, would you like to come to one of our meetings? And then you could see if you want to join. And he said, but I know we could help you find what you're looking for. So I had to wait a couple months for the next meeting. I got a plane ticket, flew up there, got a car, and ended up at where the meeting was going to be. It was the home of Louise McCulley. She owned a beautiful Victorian house, absolutely gorgeous, and a journey building was the nursery that she owned. And I walked in, and I had, there must have been 15 people there. They all came up and introduced themselves, asked me what I collected. Well, I didn't have anything because I was just starting, and it just opened up so much friendships that I'd never had. Louise took me aside and said, come out to the outside building. She said, I want to show you something, because all she collected was these beautiful old antique dollhouses. And she opened up the door, and I stood there, and it was just wonderful. It was the houses had this most beautiful smell to them, and they were just wonderful, and I began to touch them, and she turned to me and she said, Sharon, you know you're going to get older. Why don't you just forget about that 10 dollhouses? And I asked her, what do you mean? And she said, Sharon, I could see by the way you looked at my houses that that's what you really like. And you know, she was right. Well, we were part of a bigger club. I ended up going to doll shows in Maryland and Chicago and many other places. We had conventions that we went to, and my whole world just seemed to burst open with this brand new hobby. And I've been grateful to her ever since for what she did for me. So let's look at this house. This is called an English Box-back house, and I have determined that it was probably built in the middle 1800s to maybe the turn of the century. The reason it's called a box-back, and I have seen a lot of English houses, and some aren't the box-back, and you know it's the box-back because the doors open from the front, which is wonderful because I can get in there easily, I can decorate, I can clean, I can restore, whatever I need to do. I've had other houses where all I could do was work on them from the back because there was no accessibility through the front, so you either had the front looking at you or you had the back. This is why I like this style and this age, because you can open the doors and I can see the front and I can see the back as well. One of the particular things I love about this house is the architecture. I can go to an auction and I can see 10 different houses, and the one that always captures my eye is where it's got this gorgeous architecture. And as you can see, it has beautiful chimneys. It has some wonderful architecture on the outside. Here's an emblem, and then some more architecture here. The windows are beautifully framed, and this house was all intact. I didn't have to do anything to it. You can see the window sills, but what's really interesting on this house is that it has this wood molding strip that goes all the way across, and that is something I haven't seen before. The outside gives you the illusion that it's brick, and it's done beautifully, and it's painted, but it also has a slight indentation, which makes you feel like it is real brick. Then we have these beautiful, the fence, what I think was to be, and what it was to be was a garden, or you could put a flower bed in it. And then the door is exceptional. The door doesn't have its original hinge, but it doesn't matter. It is perfect, and the carving and everything is beautiful. When I stand there and look at it, I think of a bride whose husband gave it to her as a gift on their wedding day, and she's standing looking at it for the first time. Children getting ready to open it up to play. A father who has made it for her, and he is showing her for the first time what her birthday or Christmas gift is. So I'm going to open it up. But first I want to tell you that outside we have 2 wooden dolls. And that's Sharon and Karen, and their father has told them to come outside and wait for their grandmother. So they're standing there patiently to greet their grandmother, and then to take her up to the celebration. And today, that is what's going on in this house. So I'm going to open up one side for you to look at. And I'll go back and open up the other side. And the first thing you see before you see anything in the room are the absolutely beautiful curtains and drapes. And I have looked at these quite a bit, and I'm really very certain that they are original because of the sewing that's on them, because of the material. These are ormolu railings, and on the curtains, they're beautifully done, and they would be exactly like what you would have saw in a Victorian house. The cornice boxes have material on them, but it almost makes it look like it's painted on. And they're in perfect shape. I don't touch them at all because of their age, but you can see tassels, and so I'm really sure they're the original ones. And I just think the house is beautiful. So when I walk over, I see 2 of my very favorite rooms. When I buy a house, they're usually with nothing in them, and this one had nothing except some wonderful coverings that were on the floors, and they're beautiful, and I have never seen these type of coverings, so these could be original. It had nothing in it, so I always start with the kitchen and the nursery. That's my 2 favorite rooms, because in those 2 rooms there's just so much life. And what I want to show you in this room, this is my nursery, and I always make sure we have a nursery in here. But also when I look at this room and all of these rooms, I don't just see what I've put in there, but they remind me of my friends. I never have called a person who sells dollhouses and dollhouse furniture, I've never called them a vendor or a seller or a dealer, because they work so hard to find these items, and sometimes it takes a long time to find them. They bring them to the shows, they put them in the cases, and I'm just the lucky one who gets to have them and buy them from them. So I consider them that they're my friends. And one of the reasons that I consider that they're my friends is that one of the ladies that I met at the California Doll Club was Marilyn Abrams. And Marilyn had a shop in Northern California, and then she used to sell things that she had bought up at San Mateo and Nancy Joe. And for some of you who are listening to my presentation, you'll remember that those were some of the most phenomenal shows. Well, we had been friends through the club, and one day she called me and she said, "Sharon, how would you like to go to Pennsylvania?" And I gasped because I thought, oh my gosh, I'd love to go to Pennsylvania. And she said, Sharon, I don't hear you. And I said, well, Marilyn, that's because I'm taking my suitcase out of the closet and I'm already packing it. And I said, yes, I would like to go. Well, when you go with Marilyn, you're going strictly to help her find items for her shop and for her to take and sell at the shows. And we could be sitting in mud. We have sat in rain, really wet grass. We've sat on days when the sun was beating down on us. It was very miserable. But that's what the individuals who find these items, that's what they go through. So that's why I don't call them dealers, I call them my friends, because I know firsthand that was a really tough job that she and I did. So we're going to talk about the nursery first. And as I said, this is probably, of all the rooms, my very favorite. And in here I look and I see names and friendships and wonderful friends of mine. And I want to show you, this was in a case by Kathy Ray. It is a Victorian ball. It is so little, it's perfect. There was no damage done to it. And I saw it in her case and said, I'd like that right away. And she said, well, what are you going to do with it, Sharon? I said, well, this is going to go in my nursery because it's a child's ball. So I think of Kathy all the time when I see that ball. I see some beautiful furniture in here. I will show you two pieces. These are from my wonderful friend Ann Timpson. And what these are, today we call them walkers, but the name that they had during the Victorian time was minders. And so my thought is probably that was because they were created so to mind the children, to keep them from crawling around, keep them from getting into things, and probably they were more happier being in these. And then I want to point out, this is a Rock and Garner, and when I tell you about Rock and Garner, that is a furniture company that started in about 1813, and they made the most beautiful furniture. What you see in this house is all 1/12 scale, but they did make very large pieces for those really big baby houses and the mystery houses that had exceptionally large rooms for them. This is something that I just think is wonderful. It is a baby changing table. On this side it has the original towel. On the other side it has bags that probably the nappies were put in, maybe some type of baby products. It is mint and it's beautiful. And what I love about all the Rock and Garner is that they have a marble finish. There are many makers of metal furniture, but Rock and Garner has a beautiful marbled look that is done so it typifies wood, and it's just beautiful. And if you find mint pieces, it just is so shiny and it really looks beautiful. So I'm going to point out, I got from my wonderful friend Jackie Everett, and you can see it's a teeter-totter. And for those that remember them, maybe in your yard, maybe at the park, maybe in your schoolyard, this is what children, including my sister and I, used to have fun because we try to rock each other enough where one fell out. But you can see it has the beautiful marbled covering on it. It has the original upholstery on it, and this is definitely one of my very favorite, and it reminds me of a great friend, Jackie Everett. Now, I'm going to show you this piece, which is probably the most mint of all of them. Again, Rock and Garner, beautiful marbled finish, and it has all the original upholstery on the swing, plus these tassels. And I know that this is mint because it has to be, because those tassels would have been taken off by a child, they would have been lost, and I'm so fortunate to have it. Also in the bedroom is a rocking cradle, and then a beautiful cradle fit for a little princess, and a larger bed for maybe an older child. And in here I have a lot of toys like this, which is what they would have played with, and bears and sailors, and then a lot of dolls are sitting around. When you look at this room though, you think, oh my gosh, that husband and wife had a huge family. Well, not all of the children that are in here are from their family. Today, as I said, they're having a wonderful celebration down in the dining room, but all the Victorians, what they did, as soon as they came to wherever the house that they were going to have a celebration, the children, they said goodbye to the children, and the children were immediately taken up to the nursery, and that's where they played, and that's where they had dinner. They weren't allowed to sit in the dinner. And so they were all up here. So when I look in here and I can hear babies crying and children laughing and a lot of things going on, and then I look at the nannies that I have sitting around, and this is one of them, and she's wood, and she is a tuck comb. And then I have an Apollo comb wood doll in the back, and then one that is paper mache. So I think that they didn't get enough nannies that day to take care of them. But that's my nursery, and it is beautiful. You can also see there's a cabinet for furniture, and you see the candles. When I put together this house, I can always make a choice of what type of lighting. But this house is older, and more than likely it had candles. And one of my favorite scenes from Downton Abbey was when the Dowager came in and said, oh my gosh, I can't stand the lights. Because she was used to, she'd been brought up with candles, she'd had candles almost all her life, and now the mansion had electricity in it. So I'm going to let you kind of look at the nursery. Beautiful paper. I can't say if that paper is original. If it isn't original, it's very old, and you can tell by the texture on it. And so if it was replaced, which I see a lot of time, and I've had to replace papers myself, but it was beautifully done. Okay, so we're going to go down to the dining room. Now we know the kitchen is the heart of any home. In our homes, where do we go right to? We go into the kitchen, we see what is left out for us to try. We want to talk to the relative, we want to have conversations, we want to catch up. It's the heart of the home. Well, in the Victorian home, everything was done in the kitchen, and then the call to, you would hear the butler announce, dinner is served, please take your places. And that meant that everybody that was in like a sitting room could come in. So what we have here is a Victorian room, and it has so many of my very favorite items in here. I want to show you, I have a beautiful doll with a just perfect dress, all ruffles. But this is my two favorite dolls. And these are two aunts that have come to this big celebration. And Victorian women were very smart. They would have long carriage drives, and they knew if they had to protect their clothes. So they would wear a long duster coat, a light one for the summer, a heavier one for the winter, and they always protected their faces so that their hair arrived as perfect as their clothes, and their veils were down, and when they came to the house, then they could put their veils up. They're twin dolls, and I think these are the twin aunts that have come today. And they are wooden, again, very beautifully done, original clothes. So there are three wonderful favorite items of mine. And I'm going to show you this Victorian wedding cake. And I want to tell you the story behind it, because it's quite a wonderful story. This came from my friend Susan. Susan worked at and was part of Lucy's doll shop in Maine. I twice was able to go there and walk into her shop after years of just being able to imagine what it looked like. And I told Susan that I was getting married. And she said, oh, I'm going to send you a wedding gift. And I said, well, that's wonderful, but you don't really have to, because a lot of the furnishings and dolls that I have in here came from Lucy's Dollhouse. So she sent me this package. I opened up the package. There was a small package in it, and when I opened up the small package, here was this replica of a Victorian wedding cake. And I was just speechless because it has all the original trimmings, and I know for a fact of how old this is because of the carving and the paper emblems that are on it. It's perfect. So I was so excited, and my husband works from home in his home office, and I wanted him to see it. And so I ran into his office. Now keep in mind that my husband is an excellent cook from Italian descent, and I am very fortunate because in the almost 11 years we've been married, I have never had to cook a meal. He does all the cooking. And a real funny story is that when I was telling my daughters about someone that I had met and I really liked him and I felt like this could possibly be somebody that I would want to marry. Well, daughters are very protective of mothers when they remarry. And so they were a little skeptical, and they said, well, tell me about him. And I named off, he's really great, he plays golf, he does this. And I said, oh, and he's a wonderful cook. And my daughter said, oh, mother, keep him because you know you're not. Well, that is my claim to fame. I was not the best cook. But I walked into his office and I said, John, you've got to see this. This is one of our wedding gifts. And I'm sure John turned around and expected that I would have this beautiful, a griddle, a frying pan, something that we could add to his kitchen because our kitchen is known as John's kitchen and Sharon has almost nothing to do with it. And he turned around and I'm holding it with this big smile on my face, and he took a breath and he looked at it and he didn't say anything for a couple of seconds. And I think it was because, first of all, he didn't know what this was. Second, he didn't know what to say. And third, he was being careful what not to say. But this is so precious to me, and it sits on this table because the celebration that is going on today is a wedding reception. Also, I want to show you that sitting beside the table, because it is a celebration, is a beautiful asphalten. It has the champagne. It's in the ice, cooling, with towel for the butler as he pours the drinks to wipe his hands. And that sits there. And in this room, I see not only from Lucy's Dollhouse, but I see from Ann Timpson, I see from Ann Meeham, a lot of these things. A couple things I want to point out to you. This is a rock and grinder piano with candles on the side. You very seldom find one that has these sconces. And it's in wonderful shape. It has the upholstered chair that goes with it. This, I think, is wonderful, and I'd like to show this to you. It is a cake, and when I looked at it, when I opened it up and looked at it, and I thought, oh no. And I thought, oh, well, I just cut it. And then in a separate wrapping was the piece on a tin plate that someone had begun to slice up slices, and so I have the cake and I have the small slice. Over here we have a rock and grinder liquor bar, and on it I have many old types of bottles from different liquors, because as we know, once dinner was over, women didn't have to be excused. They knew this was the time when the men were going to have their drinks, smoke their cigars. There is a cupboard underneath where that's probably where they were, and they would talk about politics, everything that was going on. And the reason the women were excused because they felt that what the things that they were talking about was too delicate for their ears. And then we have just some beautiful items, some dishware, glassware, nice wooden dolls that are also there waiting for dinner to begin. Among the many beautiful items that Michael and David have sent me beautiful furniture, accessories, and dolls. I received a gift from them 2 weeks ago, and I'd like to share that with you and tell you why it's very special to me. It's a beautiful urn that is made of metal, and it has these gorgeous flowers that sit in it, and they sent it to me with thanks for the financial underwriting of the 3-day World Doll celebration that I did for them. As a board member of the museum, I wanted to assist them, and the result is this wonderful gift, and it is absolutely beautiful. I value their friendship and all the wonderful things that they ask us to do, and we are so glad to help them with all their presentations. Now I'm going to step over to the other side, and we will look at the last 2 rooms. This room is the adult bedroom, and what I think is really wonderful is his daughter is standing next to the father, and she is all dressed up and probably was going to be entertaining at the dinner, which they would sometimes invite vocalists to come and sing. Well, she's a lucky little girl that's going to be escorted by her dad down to dining, and then we know she's going right up to the nursery. And we see Dad is sitting here at his desk. He had some last-minute correspondence before they go to dinner. His favorite dog, which is a terrier, is always nearby. He has a rock and grinder desk with a pen and inkwell set. A beautiful wooden doll is a housekeeper, and she has the curls, and she is very, very old, and she's in excellent condition. She's standing here seeing if the woman of the house needs anything else. Actually, she's over here, she's all ready, she's got her purse, she's dressed, but that is her table where she would do everything she needed to do to make herself presentable. They have a beautiful rock and grinder canopy bed. Her dog is here. They have a embroidered fire screen, which was very exciting when I found it. This is one of the rarest items I have in this house that I have never saw, and it's a rock and grinder. Again, you can see the beautiful marbling, but it has a mirror attached, and that is not something that was done by somebody later. That is how it came. And then I'll show you one other piece, and this is very, very rare. Rock and grinder again, and it actually looks like it's a cabinet. But what they did was they would pull it down, their housekeeper or their maid would pour water in it, or in this case it had a spout that they could draw water up into. They'd wash, and then after they were washing, then it went up, because that way they didn't want anybody to see that they had a washstand in there. And there's several screens, some beautiful items on the bed, and a tapestry in the back. Our last room is the kitchen. And like I said, this is one of my favorite rooms. I was told that the way you put a house together, you start with your floor coverings, and then you put your furniture in, and then you can add accessories, mirrors, pictures, lighting, and then because if you layered more layers in there, it made the house have more personality. In the kitchen, it was real easy to do because I love kitchens, and kitchens were so busy that they had so many people there, and so it was a huge kitchen. They had to cook huge amounts of meals, and you can see we have many tin cans with food in them. On the table there is pots and pans and all sorts of utensils. These are rock and grinder coal keepers, an oil can, cup, On this wall we have a Marklin canister set. We have an ice, what they called an ice keeper. It was the very earliest form of a refrigerator. They brought in big chunks of ice, so the tongs are sitting up there. You can see great dishes, the stove. A lot of food items are sitting in different places, and like I said, the kitchens are some of my very favorite because the heart of the home was there. Now, there was no conversation, no laughing in a Victorian kitchen. You had to be quiet. And if you watched Downton Abbey, Mrs. Patmore was always saying, "Girls, stop that doodling. Stop that. You're not mixing that pudding right. You cannot talk." She was but that was typical of a head housekeeper. In the middle, we have 2 stairwells, 2 halls with different items in there. And in the bottom one, you see one of the visitors and her dog have come down. And when I layered mine, I always made sure they had animals because Victorians love their animals. They had, of course, make sure that there's a lot of children in them. And they loved their homes to be inviting to the fact where they would bring back the rarest of rare items from all over countries. Because someone said, "Well, you can't put German furniture in an English house." Well, you can, because they traveled so extensively that they would bring back beautiful items from China, from all places, Africa, Japan, Germany, and France, and they liked to bring them back, and they would put them into their houses because then you knew that they were a very wealthy couple. Not only could they go to these countries to buy them, but they bought the beautiful artifacts and they stored them. And so you see a few of those type of things in both of these hallways. And that's my house. And I hope you enjoyed seeing it and learning a little bit about houses from the Victorian times. I thank you for listening, and I appreciate that you came with me to look at it. Thank you.